Welcome to the latest episode of the More People podcast. I'll be your host, Richard Hanwell, Managing Director for More People. It's a pleasure today to be joined by Mark Spurdens. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you.
Mark, if you'd be so kind as to just give us a quick intro to yourself.
I'm Mark Spurdens. I'm a senior lecturer now at the University of Lincoln National Centre of Food Manufacturing. I've been in the food industry for over 40 years. Started at 13 in a workshop because our family business was haulage. So
Wow.
I grew up in an HGV workshop within the food supply chain. Sort of worked in various roles, from technical manager to ops director to MD to COO.
Wow.
Over those years, and in most places within the food value chain.
Fantastic. Superb. Like you say, Mark, you've been in the industry for over 40 years. You must have seen it all. But what towards the more recent years prior to the lecturing piece, what do you consider to have been the biggest challenges that the industry faced?
Clearly, the ones that everyone talks about, in terms of Brexit, in terms of friction within the borders, recruitment and retention of people, cost pressures every year, relentless cost pressures, particularly with things like the national minimum wage starting. That ensured that every year when I was an ops director, I had to become 4 or 5% more efficient to stand still because the national minimum wage was moving each year.
Wow.
So those are a range of challenges. I think they would depend whereabouts you sit within the supply chain. Most recently, we've also got environmental impacts and climate change.
Massively.
And we've got the shifting kind of dynamics of supplier customer pressures, which just keep on ramping up. And I think most recently, some of the things I've been talking about with people in the industry include the audit burden that's come back.
Okay.
It's come back around. So the thing that I've just been talking about recently is things like the BRC standard that was brought in, and I'm old enough to remember when it was brought in, to reduce the audit pressure on businesses.
It was version 4 when I started.
Was it? Well, I was version 0. So I mean, it's just on my mind at the moment because I think it was an interesting conversation that I was having with Kelly Shields from the FPC this week. So lots of pressures from lots of different angles, and I'm only mentioning that one because it happens to be on my mind.
It's very topical. It's hugely topical. Do you think from different retailers that certain organisations have got tougher audits? Is it again because, like you say, back in the day, the BRC was unannounced and it was the big audit ready piece and what have you, and then that, I'm not saying one-upmanship, but certain retailers were pushing that their audits to a different standard. Is that
I think there's always been a bit of, I'm going to make my audit tougher than someone else's audit. And then you'd have to come into the question of what benefit is that giving you? Because what you're actually doing is you're adding more cost into your own value chain by asking people to achieve things that don't make any impact on the safety or quality of the product that you're buying them for. So I think that's a key question for a retailer or anyone to ask themselves when they're managing their value chain. I don't think any particular audit's more difficult than another, simply because most businesses now are very audit savvy. And they're audit aware. So the other thing that I've seen is businesses that are really good at managing audits and even really good at managing unannounced audits, but are their products any safer? And in some cases, are they less safe?
You've had the privilege, I guess, and the challenges of working food manufacturing, fresh produce, horticulture, you name it. Were the challenges vastly different? Obviously, you've got your seasonal piece and the climate change, etc. But which sector posed you the most amount of challenges?
The ones with the largest peaks. So, when I started working in flowers, I thought I'd seen a peak because I'd done Brussels sprouts at Christmas. So, Brussels sprouts and parsnips at Christmas is a peak. But Valentine's, Mother's Day are the biggest peak. And Valentine's is the worst because, not to be sexist, but men are not great at planning.
True.
So the Valentine's peak always comes last minute while men panic. But I would say that was incredibly challenging just by, you look at peak hour, peak day in your capacity planning and modelling, and that's very different. In flowers, it's very difficult to justify having that capacity to meet that demand, and there's limited things you can do to smooth that demand. In things like, when I was making cranberry sauce for Christmas, well, you'd start making cranberry sauce well in front, and you'd freeze it down, and you'd temper it, and you'd have that program of supplying. Those kinds of things aren't possible with flours, and the flour supply chains tend to be long and complex. So, if your sales and operational planning is predicting a particular level of sale, and you're ordering that from South America, the roses that you've got coming in for South America for Mother's Day or Valentine's Day, more likely, it's more difficult to adjust that length of supply chain than some of the others.
We stumbled across it there when we're talking about challenges, but it links quite nicely into what you're doing now, the recruitment and the retention into the in industries. Before we get on to what you're doing now, what kind of processes, or how are you looking to overcome that kind of hurdle when you had your senior roles within the industry?
Well, most of it is just about, I would say, being a decent human being and treating people the right way, which impacts on retention. But fundamentally, building a good culture, particularly now with the generational change, there's more of an emphasis on being purpose driven.
Okay.
So people wanting to work for a business where they can understand your values and your purpose.
Yeah, associate with it, I guess.
And be associated with it. And then in terms of retention at a senior level, it's the things that you would think about, pay and conditions and training, which kind of go without saying. People tend to spend and stay in businesses where they've got friends.
Yep.
So it's also that teamship. Of having and being a team that people want to stay within.
Yeah. A positive culture, yeah, all pulling in the same direction. It's fascinating to watch your career of late, and this jump into the University of Lincoln. Talk to me about how that happened and how that's going now.
I've always had a little bit of an interest in the academic side. Something that I didn't realise, although I've moved a lot within my career, you can only really help one business at a time. Or one team at a time if you're moving between roles. In one program that I'm working on at the moment, I've got 95 businesses. So I can work with people across 95 businesses. I can coach their teams. I can help bring on their managers. In some cases, I can help advise on investment and other things, and help them find investment opportunities.
What are you witnessing nowadays, whether it be at the University of Lincoln or when you're talking to past and present colleagues, that is working to get these guys and girls into the industry?
Well, there's the distinction that I think was still there 30 years ago, that there's a big difference between educated and intelligent. So we've got a lot of intelligent people within the food industry that haven't had the education. And I'm not just saying this because I happen to work for the National Centre for Food Manufacturing, but because it's something I've always been passionate about. We have in the food industry a lot of hardworking, intelligent people, and it doesn't take too much just to scaffold them then to being educated in having a degree or the fundamental information they need to be a better operations manager, a better engineering manager, a better technical professional. The thing that I've seen changing is some businesses grasping that as a concept and using people like the National Centre for Food Manufacturing to provide that scaffolding for people within their team. As I say, I think that distinction has always been there, but I think there's a difference. If you play sport, you can tell if you're playing against someone who's being coached, against someone who's just picked it up as they've gone along. So there's also that kind of coaching element that if you're looking at succession and you're looking for the next generation within your team, get them a form of coaching. I mean, I'm going to say, obviously, levy-funded apprenticeship programs are fantastic, but whatever you choose for that scaffolding, give them that opportunity and be open. Right the way back when I was working at Tinsley Foods and we were looking at graduate schemes, I had a thing about graduates and stars. So we changed the name of what we were doing back then 20 years ago to be graduates and stars. And we brought people in who were intelligent but perhaps had left school at 16.
Yeah.
And we provided them with the framework, and not surprisingly, most of those are now senior managers within the food industry.
Yeah, I think we have to have a bit more of an open mind about bringing people from outside the sector in as well.
Yeah.
I love driving it from grassroots and bringing people into the schemes that we've mentioned, but it'd be nicer to have a little bit more of an open mind as well about bringing people in that aren't necessarily in the produce industry right now. I mean, when I first started 19 odd years ago, you'd have to get somebody with mango experience going into a mango business. It was almost unheard of, someone going from produce into food manufacturing. And I'm so pleased to see that change now. But it'd be quite nice to see some stronger or bigger changes, or bring people in, just a fresh mind.
Yeah, and I've seen that work. I mean, my personal view would be, you probably need fast-moving consumer goods.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're going to come in, don't come in from a place that isn't time pressured. Probably.
God help you.
But provided you've got FMCG experience, you're going to be okay, and you're going to bring a different perspective. Because if you only recruit people into meat that have got meat experience, people into produce that have got produce experience, and people into high care food manufacture or ambient that have got those kinds of experiences. And bear in mind, I've worked across all of them.
Yeah.
And maybe I've been useless at all of them, but people get promoting me and giving me more money, so possibly I've been okay.
Yeah.
There's those core competencies that are important in each of those. But there's also the number of times I've had a success because I've seen something in ambient, working for Amy's. I've seen something in frozen that I've then been able to apply in chilled. I think it's relatively short-sighted and almost puts you at a competitive disadvantage. Do you remember a business called Fenmark?
Yes, very much so.
A chap called Mark Harrod.
Yep.
Yeah. So what Mark used to do is he would have something called a new starters supper.
Okay.
So periodically we'd go out, sometimes the George, sometimes somewhere different, but he would invite new starters that hadn't been in the business for very long. He would also have events where he would deliberately expose the board to a wide. So, and I'm very old, so I'm talking, I'm probably talking 20 years ago. But Mark, I think, was a very smart man and in many ways ahead of his time.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
But those things still go on. And working with a business like Greenyard, and Greenyard now still a €3 billion turnover business.
Wow.
Their team deliberately exposed themselves to different experiences and ask and genuinely value the opinions of people across the whole of the business. So in some ways that links back into retention and recruitment.
Massively. I think we have to evolve. You're right. We have to keep evolving it and taking Mark's idea there and evolve it and finesse it and keep moving it forward. For some people, it would be totally new for them to do it, but it'd be interesting to see how that idea has carried on moving. But Mark, we could speak all day about this, and I can't thank you enough for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to hearing more of your tales of the University of Lincoln moving forward.
No, thank you.
Thank you very much.
As you know, if I can help anyone at all, just use me as the contact for the university. That's why we exist.
I'm sure we will. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.